What's up, DTube? What is up, Steam blockchain? So today I want to talk a little bit about EOS Rex that went live yesterday, I think it was. I want to talk a little bit about what it is. So Rex is a EOS resource exchange where you can borrow resources on the EOS network to your EOS account, for example, CPU or network. I'm not sure if RAM you can borrow that. I'm not quite sure about that right now, but at least it's CPU and network that is needed to do things on the EOS blockchain transactions and stuff like that. So I want to talk a little bit about this because it's very interesting, because I saw that, for example, for one EOS you can borrow 2000 EOS in resources for 30 days. So it's a little bit similar to what we have on the Steam blockchain with the delegate feature, where someone can lend out resources and then maybe get tokens back in return. So we're seeing this rent and share economy is going to grow, and the way people look at value is going to change from just fiat money, which wasn't tied to resources, to that money becomes like a digital stock that has resources attached to it, that basically gives you access to use resources on a specific blockchain. And this is kind of interesting because we're moving up to a world with maybe 10 billion humans, which means that humans eventually is going to look at value more from a resource perspective. Because if we're moving up to 10 million humans on planet Earth, it means that humans have to look more at how can we build better systems where each human is using less resources, being less of a drain on the whole system as a total. So we're moving every single value system on the internet is going to move to stake or borrow or lend or share your resources. This is what we've been seeing with the real estate, how it's moving towards more rent, because there's less need to be an owner in a modern world, because everything is more fluid. So if we can use stake something, if we can use rent something, lend something, borrow something, it's creating an effect where we're more resource efficient and we're less of a drain and we're using less resources, and we're only taking what we need and sharing the rest. So what we're trying to do is, with each token, we're trying to maximize the value in terms of distribution. So we don't just have tokens that are sitting still at one location, but it's going to take some time. But eventually, we're trying to create an effect where we're using maximum efficiency, maximum value systems, and this is also something that gets kind of interesting with these new D-apps and social networks that are going to be on sidechains and all of this, that when people post something, they're taking resources. So eventually we're probably going to get an effect where people pay tokens to be seen. They're paying to allow their message to come out there and get more eyeballs. And then people that are listening and caring, they get rewarded tokens. And this creates a very, very interesting effect, because how we looked at these systems in the past was that everyone should post something, everyone should have a page, everyone should have massive followers. But what we're now creating is where passive investors is going to be a huge thing in this whole global economy, where a lot of people are just going to, they're not going to be a active creator. They're just going to, okay, I have some resources here, I'm just going to borrow it out, and they can have value coming in passive. And that is something that's really great with this economy, this modern economy that we're sort of building, how that allows people more free time over to look at other stuff in the world, other things that needs to be solved, and stuff like that. So what is cool about this is that people will be able to rent resources for a very, very cheap way with the EOS Rex. As I said, you can lend for 30 days 2000 EOS for 1 EOS. That's a pretty good deal. And we don't know how that's going to look in the future, but what it eventually is going to create is it's going to allow a person to create their own little universe on a blockchain and create these side chains and create these new interesting business models that it just wasn't it wasn't possible to do this in the past. And it gets kind of interesting because many ways people think linear terms, even on the Steam blockchain, how they think in terms of followers or users, that it needs to be, oh, we need to get to 1 million users or is some number like this. But in an efficient system, as long as we have value being created, doesn't matter if it's from one human or from a robot, but it just means that as long as you have value coming from whatever source, it means that most people don't have to create something if they don't want to. So we want, right now, with the algorithms also are coming, we're going to create an internet where people either want to be entertained, have fun, or get the best knowledge possible. And that's eventually what the algos are going to reward. That is what the token systems are going to reward. And that is kind of nice. Because you can already say right now that there's a huge drain on what people do daily. There's so many tasks that really are not necessary. People, for example, now with modern technology, that it's becoming so good, so most people don't have to, they can work from home. They don't have to go with a car to the other side of the planet to do some work. Technology is getting so good, so you can do all your work from the specific location you are, and that's just better. And then they can take out the car when they want to have some fun. And we're probably going to see interesting models there where how cars are going to, for example, cars create energy when they drive, so you could probably connect some kind of blockchain to that it mines tokens or something when a car is moving to create more value in more interesting ways, and how that can connect to other cars, and cars can lend resources. It's just I find it very cool, this whole way of viewing at it from a resource perspective. How, for example, I mean, even with Facebook and YouTube, there are already sort of these inefficient systems where they just harvest energy from humans. Humans create a lot of value, or they just scroll around, and they're already harvesting that energy to sell to advertisers and stuff like that. But it's kind of this weird business model, which is not really treating humans with that level of respect that they actually should have. And humans should have more be able to decide more how they want to do things, what kind of software that they want to use, what kind of hardware. People have sort of been limited to this, where most people sit on the Facebook because there is not that many alternatives, because their friends may not be on other places. And with phones and stuff like that we have had a monopoly on technology, and how it has been sold to people super high prices, so it's kind of hard to get access to technology. Now it's getting easier. Software and hardware is getting down in price, and most software is moving towards open source. And as this whole industry opens up for more people to have access, it just means that we're just going to create better systems. And it's going to be interesting to see all these side chains that is going to be possible because of these new business models. Obviously, we that are on Graphene blockchain, like on Steam, we saw it very early how what a superior blockchain system this is, that we don't have any fees, 3 seconds transaction fees, or 3 seconds for a transaction without any fees, that it just goes smoothly. Same with BitShares. We see how this is superior technology. We see how eventually all the token systems are gonna move towards a way where people realize that they probably don't even need to be a so-called owner of tokens, but that there's going to be a lot of sponsored token systems. For example, on Publish 0x, I can, for example, send a tip and it's sponsored by the team, so I can tip a person without even having any tokens. So people sort of realizing that if we can just lower the entry level, if we can just try to remove the gateway where a person has to be an owner, they have to be super advanced technologically. If we can remove all these barriers, and a person can be an owner if they want, but in the long run, it's probably going to be a smaller aspect that go for owner, and most people are going to be lenders or borrowers, because then they very quickly can get into the game. And that is what is interesting, how it's gonna, the paradigm is gonna switch completely. Right now, most people are sort of in this hoard scarcity paradigm, and it's very easy to understand because the world has been in a scarcity paradigm for a very, very long time. But as it becomes sort of democratized, the whole value system and how everything gets dematerialized, it gets very interesting because it opens up for a person. For example, most of this stuff has already happened, but it's only been available for big banks and companies, that they can make value on value on value. And now, just because technology is advancing at such a fast speed, time is speeding up, and what happens is that a person, just one single empowered person, can do the same as it took 10,000 people for in the past. And that is kind of interesting. That is kind of cool. So, and then eventually we're going to get one user interface where people can send you any value. So that's interesting to consider. Because right now, even the idea that we right now switch to tabs in a browser, or that we're using so many various apps, all this can move into one interface eventually. And that is where it's heading. And that is kind of cool. And it will take some time, because right now we have some cool projects also being worked on that I've heard from a friend. One of them is called Hashgraph, and the other one that is being worked on is Cardano. And these seems to be very long-term, large projects, and for them to roll out, it's going to take a couple of years. And it's also going to open up people's minds that blockchain is one kind of technology, and people are looking at other models also which may work similar or even better. And there's so much unexplored territory in this space still, especially when it comes to digital identity and governance. These are very nuanced topics. For example, tokens, lend and borrow tokens with new EOS Rex or delegate on Steam. This is probably a little bit more simple to solve. The harder things will be digital identity and governance, and these are the newest things that people are going to discuss for decades. And it's going to be cool to see people have the opportunity to start to discuss this on a more global perspective, because right now people sort of have a hard time to discuss things on other platforms because they are kind of limited, and you sort of feel that there is an overwatcher, that and there is sort of like there is this narrative that people should only discuss this, and you also have this misaligned business way of doing businesses, where you have the consumers and then you have the advertisers that sort of want to leech on the consumers, and it sort of is an unfair relationship in many aspects. And capitalism kind of had to evolve from that side, where companies basically are paying you instead of you paying them. But it's probably going to go both ways, where you pay them and they pay you to pay attention to something new. So there's a lot of things happening in this space right now, especially right now, and it's going to be interesting to follow EOS, Steam, BitShares, because they truly are the chains that are ahead of the curve of most of the other stuff. It's also interesting to follow Cardano, Ethereum, and Hashgraph, and some other things. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think the website is called EOS Rex.io or something like that, but you can Google it pretty fast and find it. And it's going to be a paradigm shift for a lot of people, and I think in many ways it has to happen slowly in many ways, or happen slowly in terms of I see sometimes people want fast changes, but everything in nature happens slowly, and I think that in many ways is great, because it creates more I think stability if people slowly can process it in their subconscious mind, perhaps. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Hopefully you enjoyed. Have a great day, DTube and the Steam blockchain. Bye bye.